What if I told you that your chronic headache is not a defect in your brain, but a hieroglyph, a sacred symbol that your soul is carving into your flesh to tell you a truth you refuse to hear? What if your skin allergy is not an immune reaction, but a detailed map of an emotional boundary that has been violated? Modern medicine, in its material genius, has taught us to see the body as a biochemical battlefield, but it has forgotten the most important question: who is the general commanding this war? The truth, the secret doctrine whispered by masters like Carl Jung, is that your body is the last oracle. It cannot lie. Every symptom, from the most trivial backache to the most complex autoimmune disease, is a coded message. It is your shadow, your unconscious, your wisest and wildest part, using the only language your busy consciousness cannot ignore: pain. The body screams what the soul whispers, and right now, your body is trying to tell you something. The question is, are you ready to become the translator? This journey we are about to embark on is not for the curious, but for the brave. It is a deep dive into the dark waters of your own psyche, using your body as a map. If you are ready to decipher the code, to turn your symptoms into wisdom and your pain into power, then make a pact now. Seal your commitment to this quest. First, like this video, not as a number, but as an act of recognition, saying yes to the wisdom of your body. Second, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, not to follow, but to join a circle of initiates who have chosen depth over the superficial. Third, go down to the comments and write the word Decipher. This will be your entry portal, your declaration that you are ready to listen. Do this now, because what comes next will forever change the way you inhabit your own skin. Our civilization has made a catastrophic mistake: the divorce of body and mind. We have been taught to treat the body as a vehicle, a biological shell that carries our consciousness, and which, occasionally, has mechanical failures. This is the greatest of all illusions. Carl Jung understood that the body is not the vehicle, but the visible manifestation of the psyche itself. It is the stage of earth, blood, and bone where the invisible drama of the soul unfolds. Every muscle tension, every inflammation, every palpitation is an act in this play. Modern consciousness, with its scalpels and its chemicals, tries to fix the set and the actors, but refuses to read the script. The physical symptom is the script made flesh. It is the metaphor that has ceased to be a figure of speech and has become a biological reality. When we say we have a lump in our throat, we are not just using an expression. The psychic energy of that contained anger, of that unprocessed humiliation, descends into the digestive system, a system designed to break down food, not toxic emotions. The result: heartburn, gastritis, ulcers. The body is literally trying to digest the indigestible. The pain you feel is not a mistake. It is an excessive meaning. It is your soul trying to communicate an overload, a conflict that the conscious mind, with its arrogance and its fears, refuses to admit. The migraine that throbs in your temples may be the cry of an intuition being rationalized to death, the pressure of a truth that wants to emerge but is constantly repressed. The body, in its absolute loyalty to the totality of your being, takes on the burden of our emotional dishonesty. It becomes the guardian of the truths we have exiled. Illness, therefore, ceases to be a curse and becomes a compass. It points directly to the area of our life that is out of balance, to the part of our psyche that has been neglected and is now crying out for attention. Understanding this is the first step toward a healing that not only removes the symptom, but reintegrates the soul. It is to stop asking, "What is wrong with my body?" and to start asking, "What is my body trying to tell me about my life?" The answer is always an invitation to transformation. The symptom is the doorway to your own inner labyrinth, and the pain is Ariadne's thread that will guide you through it. To ignore it is to remain lost, treating the shadows on the cave wall, while the real fire that projects them burns, forgotten, at the center of your being. To understand somatization, one must first understand the nature of the unconscious. It is not a dusty basement where we store bad memories, as a certain simplistic psychology has suggested. In the Jungian view, the unconscious is a living, pulsating, and creative matrix. It is the source of all our vital energy, our instincts, our symbols, and our archetypes. And, crucially, it does not communicate through the linear logic of the conscious mind. Its language is that of dreams, symbols, synchronicities, and most dramatically, the body. When consciousness becomes excessively one-sided to rational, to controlling, to adapted to external expectations, the persona, it creates a split, a vast amount of psychic energy, containing our authentic emotions, our unlived potentials, and our darkest truths, is repressed, but energy cannot be destroyed. It only transforms. This repressed energy, charged with meaning and emotion, behaves like a caged wild animal. First, it scratches at the bars, manifesting as anxiety, slips of the tongue, or disturbing dreams. If consciousness continues to ignore it, the energy becomes more desperate. It then does what Jung called a descent into matter. It infuses itself into the autonomic nervous system, the hormones, the tissues, and begins to speak the only language the stubborn ego cannot ignore for long: physical pain. The body, then, becomes a theater of symbols. A pain in the shoulders can literally be the weight of the world you insist on carrying alone. The excessive responsibility that your strong person persona has taken on. Vision problems can symbolize a refusal to see a painful truth about your relationship or your career. Psoriasis, a disease that creates an armor of scales on the skin, may be the manifestation of extreme vulnerability, a desire to protect oneself from the world, to create a barrier between one's sensitive self and an environment perceived as hostile. The symptom is a work of art from the unconscious. It is precise and symbolic. It chooses an organ not at random, but for its symbolic function. The heart, a symbol of love and connection, suffers when there is a broken heart or a lack of passion for life. The lungs, which exchange air between the inside and the outside, can be affected by deep sorrow, the sigh, or a feeling of existential suffocation. The psyche is not attacking the body. It is using it as a screen on which to project its condition. The cry of physical pain is the echo of the soul's silence. It is a mechanism of compensation. Life, in its incessant search for wholeness, will use any means necessary to force us to look at what we neglect. Illness is, paradoxically, an act of health for the psyche as a whole. It is a fire alarm system. We can curse the noise and try to turn it off, or we can be grateful that it alerts us to the fire that is consuming our inner home. The shadow is perhaps the most crucial Jungian concept for understanding illness. The shadow is our other self, our dark twin. It contains all the parts of ourselves that our ego and our persona have decided to reject for being unacceptable, inconvenient, or bad. In it reside our anger, our envy, our greed, our rawest sexuality, but also, and this is vital, our undeveloped talents, our repressed creativity, and our spontaneous joy. Everything that does not fit the idealized image we have of ourselves is banished to the dark basement of the shadow. The problem is that by repressing these parts, we do not annihilate them. We only make them unconscious, and they do not remain passive. They accumulate an immense energetic charge and seek, at all costs, a way to come to light. Somatization is one of the shadow's favorite channels. When we live an excessively good, proper, and controlled life, our natural aggression, for example, has nowhere to go. This energy, which should be used to set boundaries, to say no, to fight for our goals, is turned inward. What happens? The immune system, which is our body's army, gets confused. The aggression that was not directed outward begins to attack the body itself. Autoimmune diseases arise: lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis. The body is literally at war with itself, enacting the psychic conflict between the good tissue's ego and the aggressive shadow. Likewise, a person who represses their vulnerability and their right to be cared for, who builds a persona of unshakable self-sufficiency, may develop an illness that forces them to stay in bed, dependent on others. The shadow, ironically and tragically, forces the person to live out the very thing they most feared and rejected. The physical symptom becomes a mirror of the shadow's quality. A rigidity in the body, as in fibromyalgia or certain chronic pains, may mirror a moral rigidity. An inflexible perfectionism, a refusal to relax psychologically. Chronic fatigue may be the body imposing the rest that the workaholic mind refuses to take. The manifestation of our part that yearns for stillness and contemplation. The work of healing, then, is not to fight the symptom, but to turn and face the shadow that projects it. This requires a radical act of humility, to recognize that what you most despise in others' laziness, anger, dependence lies within you, and that this part is not your enemy, but a potential ally, a source of energy and vitality that has been imprisoned. Integrating the shadow means accepting your totality, bringing the energy that was being used for repression back into consciousness. By doing so, the energy that fueled the symptom is released. The body no longer needs to scream, because the soul has finally begun to listen. At the heart of many chronic illnesses lies what we can call a psychological complex. A complex, in Jungian terminology, is a cluster of energy-laden memories, emotions, and thoughts usually formed around an archetypal wound, the wound of abandonment, betrayal, humiliation, or injustice. When this primary wound is not consciously processed and healed, it does not disappear. It becomes an autonomous vortex in the psyche, a black sun that draws similar experiences to itself and drains the ego's vital energy. This active complex is the real wound that does not heal, and the body is often forced to give it a physical form. Imagine an experience of abandonment in childhood. The pain, fear, and anger associated with it are so overwhelming that the child represses them to survive. The abandonment complex is formed. In adult life, any situation that threatens a separation and argument with a partner, a friend's job change activates the complex. The person is flooded with the same childhood emotions, but the conscious mind doesn't make the connection. It just feels overwhelming anxiety, a pain in the chest, a feeling of emptiness in the stomach. The body is reenacting the original wound. If this pattern repeats for years, the energy of the complex can begin to corrode the biology. The chest pain may evolve into heart problems. As the heart is chronically bombarded by the anguish of separation, the emptiness in the stomach can become irritable bowel syndrome, as if the digestive system is in a perpetual state of stress and loss. The body is not sick, it is being loyal to the psychic wound. It is giving a physical home to an emotional pain that has become homeless. Unresolved conflicts operate in the same way. A deep desire to pursue an artistic career that was thwarted by family pressure does not die. It becomes an internal conflict between the authentic self and the adapted persona. This constant tension, this energy of frustration, can lodge in the throat, creating thyroid problems or a chronic feeling of suffocation, the artist's choked scream. Or it can manifest in the hands through tremors or arthritis, symbolizing blocked creativity. The healing process for these conditions is a kind of psychic archaeology. It is not enough to treat the inflammation in the joint. One must excavate the layers of personal history to find the original wound, the conflict that gave rise to the stagnant energy. It means bringing the complex into the light of consciousness, allowing the encapsulated emotions to finally be felt and expressed in a safe environment. It is a process of grieving for what was lost, of forgiving oneself and others, and of reframing the wound. When the energy of the complex is released and reintegrated, the source that feeds the physical symptom dries up. The body, finally free from the burden of carrying a pain that was not its own, can begin its own miraculous process of healing. Diving even deeper into the psyche, we find the archetypes, the primordial and universal structures of the collective unconscious. Think of them as the gods and goddesses of an inner pantheon: the hero, the mother, the sage, the lover, the warrior, the victim. We all have access to all these energy patterns, but our life and our culture usually force us to over-identify with just one or two, while repressing the others. It is in this battle of archetypes that many diseases find their mythological route. Consider a woman who is identified exclusively with the archetype of the Great Mother. She is the universal caregiver. She nurtures her children, her husband, her parents, her friends. Her work, she gives her energy away ceaselessly. But her opposite archetype, the lover, which represents passion, self-care, creativity, and connection with her own body and pleasure, is completely neglected. The lover's energy, starved for attention, may manifest in a dark way. Problems may arise in the reproductive organs, cysts, fibroids, symbolizing a creative fertility that has turned inward, creating growths instead of life. Or a deep depression may arise, a total burnout. as the mother has given so much of herself that there is nothing left to feed her own flame. The illness is a call from the forgotten goddess, demanding her place in the psyche's pantheon. Similarly, a man identified only with the warrior archetype, competitive, results-focused, invulnerable, represses his lover or sage archetype. He cannot show weakness, cannot connect with his emotions, cannot simply be. The constant pressure to perform can lead to a heart attack. The warrior's wound, his heart, literally, cannot withstand the incessant battle. The illness forces him to leave the battlefield and get in touch with his vulnerability, with the part of him that needs stillness and connection, the exiled lover. Archetypal conflicts are mythological dramas staged in our biology. The struggle between the innocent archetype, who wants to remain safe and protected, and the explorer, who craves adventure and risk, can manifest as agoraphobia or panic attacks, a physical paralysis that mirrors the psychic impasse. The battle between the sage, who seeks truth at all costs, and the ruler, who seeks control, can lead to tension, headaches, and bruxism, a physical attempt to control and contain an excessive conflicting thoughts. Healing, at this level, is an act of mythological diplomacy. It involves recognizing which archetype has dominated your life and which has been banished into exile. The work is to create a dialogue between them, to honor the needs of each, and to find a dynamic balance. It is not about killing the warrior to give life to the lover, but about teaching the warrior to rest and to listen to the lover's advice. It is about creating an internal round table where all the gods and goddesses of your psyche have a seat and a voice. When this balance is achieved, the internal war ceases, and the body, which was the battlefield, can finally find peace. Jung viewed the psyche as a relatively closed energy system, much like the concept of energy in physics. He called it libido, but not in a purely sexual sense like Freud. For Jung, libido is vital energy, the driving force behind all psychological processes, thinking, feeling, desiring. In a healthy state, this energy flows harmoniously between the conscious and the unconscious, between the different aspects of our personality. Chronic illness, from this perspective, is almost always a symptom of a severe blockage in the flow of this vital energy. Imagine your psyche as an irrigation system in a garden. The water energy needs to flow freely to nourish all the plant's aspects of your being. Now, imagine you build a dam to block the water flow to a part of the garden you don't like, perhaps the part with the weeds of your shadow. At first, it seems to work. The unwanted part dries up. But two things happen. First, the dammed-up water begins to build immense pressure. Second, the part of the garden that was deprived of water begins to die, and the entire ecosystem becomes unbalanced. The dam is repression. The built-up pressure is anxiety, obsession, tension, and the inevitable leakage of this pressure, which seeks the path of least resistance, is somatization. The blocked energy manifests in the body as stagnation. In biological terms, this can translate into poor circulation, chronic inflammation, sluggish lymphatic systems, tumors. The body is mirroring the energetic state of the psyche. The energy that should be used for creativity, for relationships, for personal growth, gets trapped in a complex or an unresolved conflict, and this stagnation becomes pathology. Fibromyalgia, for example, can be seen as a state where vital energy is trapped in a cycle of pain and tension throughout the body. The energy doesn't flow, it hurts. Chronic fatigue syndrome is perhaps the clearest example. The person's energy system is completely depleted because most of their libido is being consumed by an unconscious conflict, leaving almost nothing for conscious life. Healing, therefore, is a work of energy engineering. The goal is to identify where the dam was built and why. What fear, what trauma, what limiting belief is blocking the natural flow of life. The therapeutic process becomes a careful demolition of this dam. This involves bringing the repressed material to consciousness, allowing the associated emotions to be released, catharsis, and then finding new, more constructive ways to channel this liberated energy. It's learning to use the energy of anger for assertiveness, the energy of fear for careful planning, the energy of sadness for empathy. When the flow of libido is restored, the body responds. The energy that was previously stagnant, creating pain and inflammation, can now flow freely, nourishing and repairing the tissues. Healing does not come from adding something from the outside, like a medication, but from releasing something that was already inside, trapped. It is restoring the river of life to its natural course. The ultimate goal of life, from Jung's perspective, is not happiness, wealth, or success, but individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are, a unique, whole, and indivisible individual. It is the lifelong journey to realize the potential of the self, the archetype of wholeness that resides at the center of our psyche. And, paradoxically, illness and suffering are often the most powerful catalysts for this journey. In the first half of life, our primary focus is on adapting to the external world. We build our ego, develop our persona, establish a career, and form a family. It is a process of outward expansion. However, around midlife or sometimes earlier, through a crisis, this external journey begins to feel empty. A deep longing for meaning arises, a sense that there must be something more. It is the call of the self to the second half of life, the journey inward. Illness is often the herald that announces this call. A serious or chronic illness is an event that shatters our identifications with the ego and the persona. It forces us to stop. It confronts us with our mortality, our vulnerability, and our powerlessness. The man who identified as a powerful executive finds himself frail in a hospital bed. The woman who was the perfect mother must learn to receive care. Illness dethrones the ego from its tyranny and forces us into contact with the deepest, most neglected parts of ourselves. It is at this point that the symptom reveals itself not as an enemy, but as a guide. It is the messenger of the self, pointing to the split that needs to be healed for individuation to proceed. The healing of the symptom, then, becomes secondary to the healing of the soul. The real goal is not simply to get back to normal, to return to the life before, because it was that life that, in some way, contributed to the illness. The goal is to use the crisis as an opportunity for radical transformation. This involves a conscious dialogue with the unconscious through dreams, active imagination, and, of course, attention to the symbols the body presents. It means confronting the shadow, integrating the animus, the inner masculine in a woman, or the anima, the inner feminine in a man. And finally, shifting the center of personality from the ego to the self. In this process, the relationship with the body changes fundamentally. It ceases to be an object to be controlled and becomes a wise partner on the path of individuation. Physical healing may or may not happen completely, but that becomes less important than the psychic integrity that has been gained. The person becomes more whole, more authentic, more conscious. They have learned the lesson the illness came to teach. Illness, seen this way, is an initiation, a painful but necessary passage from a state of fragmentation to a state of wholeness. It is the alchemy of the soul, which uses the lead of physical suffering to create the gold of consciousness. If the physical symptom is a coded message, how can we begin to decipher it? Jungian psychology offers us several tools, but the most powerful is the understanding that the unconscious uses the same symbolic language in the body, in dreams, and in the imagination. Dreams, symbols, and symptoms are three dialects of the same archetypal language. Therefore, to understand a symptom, we can look at the dreams that accompany it. A man who develops a paralyzing pain in his neck might start having dreams in which he is chased by an authority figure he cannot face. The dream and the symptom are telling the same story. There is a pain in the neck in his life, perhaps a tyrannical boss or an internalized father that he is refusing to confront. The physical stiffness is a mirror of the psychological rigidity, of the fear of turning his head and facing the problem. The dream provides the plot, the narrative context that gives meaning to the physical pain. The next step is to work with the symbol itself. This is not a dictionary process. Knee pain equals fear of moving forward in life. It is a more personal and amplified approach. We must ask ourselves, what is the function of the knee? To bend, to be flexible, to kneel, an act of humility. So, the question becomes, where in my life am I being inflexible? Where do I refuse to bend? Where do I need more humility? The answer may have nothing to do with moving forward in life, but rather with a stubborn pride in a relationship. Furthermore, we can use the technique of active imagination. This involves entering a meditative state and inviting the symptom to speak. Personify the pain. If your stomach pain could talk, What voice would it have? What would it say? It might say, I am full of anger and resentment that you never express, or I am starved for the joy and pleasure you deny yourself. This inner dialogue can bring astonishing revelations, bypassing the ego's defenses and directly accessing the wisdom of the unconscious. It is essential to treat this symptom with respect, as an entity with its own intelligence, and not as an enemy to be annihilated. This threefold approach, analyzing dreams, amplifying the symbol, and dialoguing with the symptom, creates a much richer and deeper picture of what is happening. It takes us out of the role of passive victims of our biology and puts us in the role of mystery decoders, of archaeologists of our own soul. The symptom ceases to be a meaningless noise and becomes a personal oracle. Learning to listen to this language is a skill that, once developed, transforms life. Every ache, every discomfort, becomes an opportunity for self-knowledge, a call for a deeper alignment with ourself. Our culture is obsessed with physical healing. We want the pain to go away, the tumor to disappear, the blood test to return to normal. We seek a cure as a return to the previous state, as if the illness were an unfortunate detour on our path. The Jungian perspective invites us to a radically different view. What if the purpose of illness is not physical healing, but psychic transformation? What if the illness is not the problem, but the solution to a much deeper problem we were unable to see? This is a difficult idea to accept, especially when one is in pain, but it holds a powerful key to finding meaning in the midst of chaos. Think of a person who lives a superficial life, focused on status and appearances, completely disconnected from their feelings and their purpose. A cancer diagnosis might be the only thing strong enough to break that shell. The illness forces them to confront death, to reevaluate their priorities, to ask themselves what is truly important. They may lose their hair, their job, their status, but in the process, they may find their soul. At the end of the journey, even if the body does not fully heal, the person may feel more alive, more authentic, and more whole than ever before. They were not cured of the cancer cured them of a meaningless life. Meaning transforms suffering. When we see pain only as a biological malfunction, it is unbearable, absurd. But when we can see the purpose behind it, the call for change, the lesson to be learned, the part of us that needs to be integrated, suffering takes on a new dimension. It becomes an initiation. The question, why me, transforms into, for what purpose, me? What is this experience trying to teach me? What part of me is it forcing me to develop? Perhaps the illness is teaching patience to an impatient person. Perhaps it is teaching vulnerability to a controlling person. Perhaps it is teaching the importance of joy to an overly serious person. The illness forces us to develop the psychic qualities we lack to become more whole. This does not mean we should romanticize pain or refuse to seek medical treatment. We must use all available resources to alleviate physical suffering. But simultaneously, we must engage in the parallel and equally important task of seeking meaning. It is a dual path, treating the body while, at the same time, listening to the soul. Often, it is when we surrender to this search for meaning that the body finds its way to physical healing, as a side effect of psychic healing. But even if that doesn't happen, something far more valuable has been gained: wisdom. And wisdom is a cure for the soul that transcends the fate of the body. After journeying through the depths of the psyche, confronting the shadow, dialoguing with archetypes, and seeking meaning in pain, we arrive at the crucial point, the practice. How do we integrate this wisdom into our daily lives? How do we transform this understanding into a way of life? The first step is to cultivate the habit of inner listening. This means creating spaces of silence in our busy lives. It could be through meditation, walks in nature, journaling, or simply sitting for 5 minutes without distractions and asking your body, how are you today? What do you need? At first, the answers may be subtle: a slight discomfort, a feeling of warmth, and intuition. With practice, this communication becomes clearer. You begin to notice the instantaneous connection between a stressful thought and a pang in your stomach, between a difficult conversation and tension in your shoulders. The body becomes your internal barometer, your personal lie detector, telling you when you are straying from your authentic path. The second step is radical emotional honesty. This means stopping the practice of swallowing emotions. It's giving yourself permission to feel what you feel, without judgment. If you feel anger, acknowledge it. Find a safe way to express it through physical exercise, writing, and honest conversation. If you feel sadness, allow yourself to cry. Emotional repression is the primary fuel for somatization. By allowing emotions to flow through you like a river, you prevent them from becoming stagnant swamps in your body. The third step is to honor the symbolic language of life. Pay attention to your dreams. Write them down. See the patterns that emerge. Notice the synchronicities, the meaningful coincidences that happen in your life. They are clues from the unconscious, winks from the self, guiding you on your journey. By living symbolically, you begin to see that the same power that creates the symbols in your dreams and in your body is at work in the world around you. This creates a profound sense of connection and meaning. Finally, the path to wholeness is a path of integration, not perfection. There will be days of pain and days of joy. There will be moments of clarity and moments of confusion. The goal is not to eliminate the shadow, but to learn to dance with it. It is not to silence the pain, but to learn to listen to its wisdom. It is an ongoing commitment to live in dialogue with all parts of yourself. By doing this, you cease to be a victim of circumstances and become the alchemist of your own life. You learn to transform the lead of your suffering into the gold of your consciousness. And that is true freedom. The soul, finally heard, no longer needs to scream through the flesh, and the body, finally free from the burden of being a messenger, can do what it does best, celebrate the wonder of being alive.